The German software company SAP has now agreed to pay a fine of $220 million for acts of corruption committed both here in South Africa and in Indonesia. This was during what we sometimes call the state capture era. SAP has agreed to pay the money because it paid bribes to get business with Eskom, the cities of Joburg and Tshwane, and the National Water Affairs Ministry. Some of this money will be paid to authorities in the US, some will be paid to our authorities. The first indication of the corruption committed by SAP came through the release of what came to be known as the Gupta leak reports, which showed how the Guptas were stealing from government institutions. Advocate Ouma Rabaji-Rasethaba is a Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions and head of the Asset Forfeiture Unit. Advocate, good afternoon and thank you for coming in today.
Good afternoon, Stephen, and thank you to inviting me and to your viewers at home.
These investigations have been going on for a long time. SAP did an investigation back in 2017. This is the German parent company. They realized there was a problem. It's now 2024. What kind of investigation has been underway since then?
First, around 2018, the public protector investigated the matter. And then the SIU got a proclamation to investigate Eskom and Transnet. And the SAP was invited to Zondo Commission when it was sitting. And there were a lot of cases then lodged with the police. One of the companies or one of the institutions that lodged a criminal case was the CIPC. And then, after SAP had conducted their own investigations, they then approached NPA as well.
So they gave you information about what their people in South Africa had been doing?
That's correct. So they self-reported. And
what were their people doing? They were paying bribes to get business.
The people were paying bribes to get business. And it really wasn't necessary because SAP has been in South Africa since around 1982. It's done a lot of software, provided a lot of software services for both the public sector, the private sector, our banks in South Africa, your checkers, your Pick and Pay. So it really was not necessary. As you say, the state capture era was just an era rampant of corruption and bribes.
Who were they paying the money to?
They were paying the money to Gupta-linked companies, which they called intermediaries or business development partners. So as soon as a contract is clinched, let's say with Transnet, Eskom, then these Gupta-linked companies will approach SAP here in Johannesburg and say, listen, we've helped you get this business. And then money gets paid then to these Gupta-linked companies and many other companies that were intermediaries. There are about 10 that thus far has been investigated, and of course the investigations are still going to continue. So that's basically what happened.
So just to understand the timeline, a contract would be signed between SAP and Eskom or the city of Joburg or whoever, and after that a company linked to the Guptas would ask them for money.
Yes, that's correct.
It's quite strange that, isn't it?
No, that's in fact, of course, they've done it with the coalition of the SAP executives, who then would have clinched the contract, and they did sign contracts with these intermediaries. And as soon as payment is made or a deal is clinched, there would be something that a report called Road to Closure, that once the services have been provided by SAP to Eskom or Transnet or City of Johannesburg, then the bribe is solicited.
Okay. So the individuals who are involved in this, I mean, it goes all the way to the Gupta family. It goes to Ajay Gupta and Atul Gupta, does it?
Well, there are companies that were used to launder money called GSS, Lijara. They had a lot, Cat House, they had a lot of companies that they used. So it wasn't actually the brothers themselves, but of course the payments, when the Hawks investigated, some of them ended up with Sahara Computers.
Okay. So after everything that's happened, so the Public Protector, the Zondo Commission, the investigations, the self-reporting, the investigations you will have done, that the police have done, do you believe that you now have a full picture of all the corrupt activity SAP was involved in during that time?
We can say this is a good starting point. So let me take a step back and explain that this matter has been heard in the U.S. court yesterday, in fact, in the state of Virginia. And a deferred prosecution agreement has been entered to for the next 3 years. So the court approved that non-prosecution agreement. So in these 3 years, SAP has to cooperate with South African investigating agencies to make sure that prosecution will be preferred against the individuals in the company.
Okay, so if they don't help you enough, you can prosecute them again.
If they don't help us enough, this case is going to be open for 3 years, as I've said, in the USA court in the state of Virginia. And we will let the Department of Justice in the USA know, and a conviction will be entered.
Sure. So the Americans use what I think they call it the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. If you're a company and you trade in the United States and you are accused of bribery somewhere else, they will prosecute you for that.
Yes.
And on one level, it's very arrogant. On another level, it probably does reduce corruption around the world. What's it been like working with the Americans in this case?
Really, it's been fantastic because the DOJ USA is one of the best resourced prosecution services around the world. So they really have advanced policies that help us in South Africa. They've got prosecution and sentencing guidelines around how they calculate these fines and bribes that have to be paid back. So they have to approve what has to be paid back to countries, like they had to approve 2.2 billion pay back to South Africa, and then communicate that to the lawyers for SAP.
It helps also, I'm sure, that SAP jumped to attention when the Americans got involved. They started to take it very seriously. Definitely,
because DOJ came to South Africa, Securities Exchange Commission came to South Africa, and SAP themselves came to do the investigation in South Africa.
There's been this case with the Americans. There was the case of ABB involving Eskom. Are there other cases involving big multinational companies from that time that you're still working on with the Americans?
There's still cases that we're working on with the Americans. And, Zondo Commission, when they concluded and gave their report, they've said that first we need to have a policy. So we've had to work at making sure that we've got directives that support a prosecution policy to do these non-trial resolutions or reparations, disgorgements, whichever way do you prefer. So there are a lot of cases that will be coming.
What we've seen since the end of the state capture era, I think I can call it that now, but we've seen, sort of big companies having some form of accountability. Bain, McKinsey, they've made payments to clients and said we shouldn't have done this. We've got SAP paying a fine, ABB as well. What we don't really have is individuals. And the NPA lost the Nulane case last year. I think the appeals are only being held in August. Marcelo Koko at Eskom formerly at Eskom, had the charges against him struck from the roll. And I think there's a sense among South Africans that, yes, maybe some companies will pay a fine, but no one's going to be held directly responsible for what happened. You're a deputy director at the NPA. Can you understand how people feel?
We do understand that South Africans are losing patience and they want to see prosecutions and orange overalls, but we're working very hard at it. I think one challenge we've had, and you're aware of it, is that our investigating directorate didn't have permanency. We had to work with borrowed staff, investigators, and now that Parliament has looked at this legislation, it's promulgated, we're going to have permanency. We're going to be able to employ the best investigators at good salaries. I think we'll soon see orange overalls.
So there's reasons for us to be confident there'll be more charges being laid against individuals?
You have to be very confident because it is a condition of, for instance, in this SAP case that this case is open for 3 years, and this 3 years is to make sure that SAP, DOJ, everyone who's got information, are going to give it to South Africa so that individuals who were involved in this corruption and bribes are going to be prosecuted.
The concern is that if the NPA doesn't start to win some of these cases against individuals, and I know that the National Director of Public Prosecutions herself has said, Shamila Batohi has said that the era of impunity is over. It doesn't feel like it.
It's going to soon feel like it. I think, the President has taken the issue of fighting corruption seriously. And it was the President, when we submitted our first state capture report, progress report, that one, he said the ID must be made permanent, and secondly, we need to look at making sure that they've got powers to appoint investigators with very good remuneration. So I'm very confident as a national deputy.
Advocate, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really do appreciate it. Advocate Ouma Rabaji-Rasethaba is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, one of the 4 deputy heads at the NPA.